After 15 years with TechVantage, I sat in a small conference room, facing my manager, Marjorie Thompson, and Denise from HR. Marjorie's voice was filled with a barely hidden sense of satisfaction as she told me, "We're restructuring your position." She explained the company was moving in a new direction and that my role was being eliminated. Denise slid a manila folder across the table, saying my contributions were valued, but that the research division was being merged with product development. I accepted the folder without opening it, knowing it contained the standard severance package. 2 weeks of pay for every year I worked, health benefits for 3 months, and career counseling I had no intention of using. I nodded and said, "I understand." They seemed relieved by my calm response, likely expecting anger or tears from a 55-year-old woman being pushed out of the tech industry. But I had been expecting this moment ever since I accidentally received an email thread about it a month ago. "Clean out your desk by Friday," Marjorie continued, gaining confidence from my composure. "We'll need your keycard, laptop, and phone." I stood up. "Is there anything else?" They exchanged surprised looks. Marjorie recovered first. "That's all for now. Thank you for being professional." As I walked back to my office, I passed the executive meeting room. I saw CEO Victor Lawson, who had taken credit for my work at an industry conference the previous year, talking about revenue projections. I closed my office door and sent a text to Greg, the CEO of Precision Systems, TechVantage's biggest competitor. "It's happening. Friday is my last day." The reply came instantly. "Perfect timing. Contracts are ready. Dinner tonight to finalize details." Smiled. Friday would be my last day at TechVantage, but Monday would be far more interesting. Later that evening, I met Greg at a quiet restaurant. After ordering, he shook his head. "They really did it. Cut the person who developed their core technology." I replied, "Victor never understood the depth of my work. He saw the user interface and marketing, but not the underlying architecture." 3 months ago, I had discovered that TechVantage had never filed the patent for my algorithm. I had taken matters into my own hands, filing a patent for the improvements I made to the algorithm outside of company hours. Thanks to Greg, I filed under my own name and had it approved quickly. Greg slid a folder across the table. "Everything's ready. Sign here, and Precision Systems will acquire exclusive licensing rights to your patent. We'll announce you as our Chief Innovation Officer on Monday." I reviewed the documents. The deal included a 7-figure signing bonus, equity in Precision Systems, and royalties from all products using my algorithm. Greg asked, "What do you think Victor's face will look like when he finds out?" I smiled, but my concern was with my team. "I'm more worried about them," I admitted. Greg reassured me that he had already made offers for all 6 of my team members. They would be given senior positions with raises if they wanted to join Precision Systems. By Friday, I was wrapping up my final day at TechVantage. Denise from HR ran through the standard exit interview, making sure I understood that any intellectual property developed during my employment belonged to the company. I made sure to clarify. Anything developed during company time with company resources, yes. I had made sure to leave no traces of company property, knowing full well they would need me more than they realized. Marjorie popped in at the end, feigning concern. "Everything clear for your departure?" she asked. "Will you be taking some time off?" Smiled. "Actually, I already have something lined up. I start Monday." Her surprise was almost comical. "That's fast. Anything interesting?" "A leadership position," I replied. "I'm quite excited about it." On Monday, I dressed in a sharp new suit and took a town car to Precision Systems headquarters. The press release went live at 7 a.m., announcing me as their new Chief Innovation Officer. By 9:15 a.m., I received a text from Miguel, my lead developer at TechVantage. "Complete chaos here. What did you do?" I smiled and texted back. "Check your personal email. All 6 of you have offers waiting." Meanwhile, at TechVantage, the executives were scrambling. Victor arrived at the office to find alarms going off as news of the announcement hit. By 9:30 a.m., things were already spiraling out of control. What should have been a regular start-of-the-week meeting quickly turned into a crisis session. Board members were calling in remotely, while the legal team was urgently reviewing my employment contract and the details of the algorithm's development. They were pulling every file that had my name on it. Miguel reported that someone had brought in all the servers from the research division for the tech team to analyze. I could picture it clearly. Victor pacing the conference room, demanding answers from Marjorie and the legal department. The stock was already responding to the news. Investors hated uncertainty, and the announcement had stirred up plenty of it. At 10:45 a.m., I received an email from Victor himself, practically oozing desperation. "Kira, there appears to be a misunderstanding. Please call me at your earliest convenience to discuss." I forwarded it to Precision Systems' legal team without responding. By noon, the industry was buzzing with speculation. TechVantage's stock had dropped 7% since the market opened, while Precision Systems saw a 12% increase. 3 technology journals had already asked for interviews with me about the strategic move that had shaken the accounting software industry. "How are you feeling?" Greg asked when he stopped by my office as I was settling in. "Validated," I replied honestly. 15 years of watching others take credit for my work, being told I should be grateful just to have a seat at the table. And now finally recognition. Just then my new executive assistant appeared at the door. "Dr. Jennings, the development team is ready for you in the main conference room," she said, hesitating. "TechVantage's CEO has called 4 times in the last hour. Please let him know I'm in meetings all day," I said calmly. "I'll have our legal team reach out to discuss licensing options later this week." As I walked to my first meeting as Chief Innovation Officer, my phone buzzed with another update from Miguel. "The board just called an emergency session. Victor looks like he's about to explode. Pes, my team and I accept your offer. When can we start?" By Tuesday morning, the full impact of my departure had hit TechVantage. Their flagship product, AccountSphere, relied entirely on my algorithm to process massive datasets that gave it an edge over competitors. Without licensing rights to my patent, they faced 2 unappealing options: negotiate with Precision Systems or rebuild their core technology from scratch, a process that would take years and cost millions. Miguel texted that Victor had called an all-hands meeting for 2 p.m. It was his last day at TechVantage. He and my former team would be starting at Precision Systems next Monday. "Rumor is they're going to try to sue you." I forwarded the message to our legal department. They responded almost immediately. "Let them try. Your documentation is impeccable. Development logs, timestamps, personal equipment usage. Everything is clearly established. We've prepared for this." Meanwhile, I was settling into my new role with ease. The respect I received at Precision Systems was a stark contrast to my final years at TechVantage. In meetings, people actually listened to me. My ideas weren't being stolen and repackaged by male colleagues. My age and experience were seen as assets, not liabilities. "The engineering team is implementing your efficiency improvements," Greg told me during our afternoon briefing. "Early testing shows a 51% performance boost, better than we projected." I had several refinements I never shared with TechVantage, I admitted. After I found out they were planning to eliminate my position, I saw no reason to give them my best work. "Their loss, our gain," Greg said with a satisfied smile. Speaking of which, the first licensing inquiry came in that morning, not from TechVantage, who were still in denial, but from Data Flow Systems. They were worried about being caught in the crossfire. By 3:30 p.m., Miguel sent a detailed account of Victor's all-hands meeting. The CEO had tried to project confidence, assuring the staff that TechVantage would defend their proprietary technology. But the anxiety in the room was palpable. Several employees had already updated their LinkedIn profiles, sensing the company's vulnerability. Marjorie looked like she was about to faint when someone directly asked if they had failed to secure the patent. Miguel reported that Victor quickly cut the question period short. By Wednesday, the industry fallout had intensified. 2 major clients contacted Precision Systems about switching from AccountSphere, worried about TechVantage's ability to maintain the product without the algorithm's creator. Our stock had risen another 8%, while TechVantage's continued to decline. I received a call from Denise in HR, the same woman who had slid my severance package across the table just days earlier. "Kira," she began, her voice carefully professional, "I'm calling to discuss the situation with your patent. We believe there may have been a misunderstanding about ownership rights." "I don't think there's any misunderstanding," I replied calmly. "My employment agreement clearly states that intellectual property developed on my own time using my own resources remains mine. The patent documentation confirms that. Victor was hoping you might consider coming in to discuss options. Any discussions would need to go through Precision Systems' legal department," I replied. "I'm sure they'd be happy to set up a meeting to discuss licensing terms." The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, Denise sighed. "I'll pass that along." That afternoon, I led my first formal presentation to Precision Systems' board of directors, outlining our technology roadmap with my algorithm at its center. As I stood confidently at the head of the table, not hidden in the back as I had been at TechVantage, I caught Greg's approving nod. By Friday, just 1 week after I had walked out of TechVantage, the company was in full crisis mode. Their stock had fallen 23% since Monday's opening bell, triggering calls from major investors. Industry analysts were publishing speculative pieces like, "Can TechVantage survive the algorithm crisis?" and "How one strategic blunder may cost a tech giant everything." Through industry contacts, I learned that Victor had finally acknowledged the severity of the situation to the board. TechVantage would need to either license my algorithm from Precision Systems, likely at exorbitant rates that would devastate their profit margins, or rebuild AccountSphere without using any technology covered by my patent. They had already started interviewing for a new development team. "Victor's claiming they can recreate the functionality in 6 months, Miguel told me during our Friday video call. I couldn't help but laugh. The original algorithm took me 3 years to perfect, and that was with intimate knowledge of the problem space. "Exactly," Miguel agreed. "Nobody's believing the timeline, especially after your team posted their resignation letter simultaneously. The knowledge drain is massive." That afternoon, TechVantage's attorneys finally reached out to Precision Systems to discuss potential licensing arrangements. Our legal team responded with terms that were technically fair but strategically painful. 3 times the standard industry licensing rate, plus a public acknowledgement of my role as the technology's inventor. "They'll balk at the acknowledgement more than the cost," Greg predicted as we reviewed the response. "Victor's ego won't allow him to admit he pushed out the person who created their core technology. Then they'll have to rebuild," I replied. "And every day they spend trying to replicate my work is another day we extend our lead in the market." The following Monday, just 10 days after my unceremonious dismissal, I led my first meeting with my newly assembled innovation team, which included Miguel and 5 other engineers from TechVantage. The energy in the room was electric as we mapped out the next evolution of my algorithm. "This is how development meetings should be," I commented. Anita, one of my former colleagues at TechVantage, and I used to spend so much time explaining basic ideas to executives who wouldn't listen anyway. It showed me the difference between being valued and being seen as replaceable. Here at Precision Systems, my expertise is recognized. Just as we finished a productive meeting, my assistant knocked on my office door. "Dr. Jennings, there's been a big development with TechVantage. They just announced an emergency leadership change. Victor Lawson is stepping down immediately." The news spread fast. Industry publications reported that TechVantage's board had lost confidence in Victor after failing to secure the patent for the company's flagship product. Marjorie Thompson and the head of legal were also out. That evening, I received an email from Richard Donovan, the new interim CEO of TechVantage. It was a respectful and straightforward message, unlike the desperate one Victor had sent. Richard congratulated me on my new position and wanted to discuss a fair licensing deal for my patented technology. I forwarded it to Greg with a simple note. "Phase 1 complete." Greg quickly responded. "Beautifully executed. Looks like TechVantage is learning an expensive lesson about valuing innovation. 3 months after leaving TechVantage, I sat on stage at the National Technology Innovation Conference, ready to give the keynote speech. The audience was filled with industry leaders, journalists, and aspiring developers, many of whom knew my story. The conference organizer introduced me. Dr. Kira Jennings, Chief Innovation Officer at Precision Systems, and creator of the distributed processing algorithm that has revolutionized data handling. As I approached the podium, I remembered how last year I'd been at the same conference, sitting in the back while Victor presented about TechVantage's innovations. Today, things were different. Thank you, I said. Today, I want to talk about innovation ownership and the importance of valuing intellectual contributions. My presentation covered the technical aspects of my algorithm but also touched on the broader issues of recognition and respect in the tech sector. I didn't mention TechVantage, but I emphasized how companies should protect their innovators. Afterward, several young women engineers approached me, seeking advice. One of them, barely 30, confided, "Your story changed how I document my work. I now keep detailed logs of my development process." I told her, "Smart. Your innovations deserve protection." That evening I checked my phone. TechVantage had officially announced the licensing agreement with Precision Systems, acknowledging me by name as the creator of the algorithm. Their stock had stabilized, but it was much lower than before. 1 year after being told to clean out my desk, I sat in my spacious office at Precision Systems, reviewing the quarterly innovation report. Under my leadership, the company had released 3 groundbreaking products based on my algorithm, capturing significant market share from TechVantage and others. A knock at the door interrupted me. It was Greg, holding a bottle of champagne. "Happy anniversary," he said, setting the glasses on my desk. "The board wanted me to share the news with you first. Precision Systems has officially surpassed TechVantage in market valuation for the first time in company history." I smiled, feeling quiet satisfaction. "That's what happens when you value innovation properly," I said. As Greg poured the champagne, my assistant delivered an envelope. Inside was an invitation to speak at the Women in Technology Leadership Summit. The topic: Owning Your Intellectual Value. How Proper Documentation Changed an Industry. "You've become something of an icon," Greg said, noticing the invitation. The story of the executive who didn't recognize her worth until it was too late had become a cautionary tale in boardrooms. Richard Donovan, now the permanent CEO of TechVantage, had made significant changes to how the company recognized and rewarded innovation. They had adopted policies similar to the ones I had set up at Precision Systems. "It was never about revenge," I said, raising my glass. "It was about recognition. Innovation doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from real people who deserve real credit." "To proper recognition," Greg said, clinking his glass with mine. As the afternoon sun shone through my office window, I reflected on my journey. At 56, I had finally achieved not just success but the recognition I had always deserved. My name was now permanently attached to the algorithm that had changed the industry. Exactly where it belonged.